is Rachel Dworkin from the Chemung County Historical Society. Today is April 12th, 2021, and we're recording for the COVID Memory Project. Today I am speaking with...
My name is Anders Korn. I'm a New York State resident, and I work for the New York State Department of Labor as a labor service representative, which is basically a mix of career advising and business services to help people find work and companies hire.
Okay, thank you. So I understand when the pandemic hit and you were sent home to work from home. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
It was certainly, you could say, a little bit rushed. I mean, other offices were starting to close, other facilities were starting to close, and so certainly meetings were happening, I think, at the state level and at the local level of how to do this, start preparing. But then it really just sped up. You know, they're just like, well, no, everyone just go home now, grab everything you need because you might not be back in the office for a while. And just a general kind of just a hard reset of just trying to get an entire state workforce in career services to start to just provide those career services remotely. You know, most of my job beforehand was in person or even mandated to be in person if it was a job required if you were claiming unemployment insurance. Sorry. To making it remote, to setting up secure ways to access people's confidential information, to access state databases, and that took about a week or so of just kind of letting the systems be set up, setting up the security measures, stuff like that. And we tried, and we then kind of engaged our job remotely for about 2 or 3 weeks before everyone in the Department of Labor, plus people, not even other state workers who were sent home, were basically, their responsibilities were changed over to help assist with the massive influx in unemployment insurance claims.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
I think it definitely, it was, certainly it was obvious that it was going to happen. I don't say this as a critique, but, it overwhelmed the system. The databases that were in place, the programs that were in place to handle unemployment insurance claims, which is, if you lose your job for no fault of your own, you can usually through your state government receive a weekly stipend to help you in between occupations. And it not only overwhelmed the system, but it crashed the system. The number I always hear get thrown around, don't quote me on this, is that it basically was, within a couple weeks, 8 times as many people filed for unemployment insurance as did the peak of the 2010 financial crisis. It just absolutely, the amount of new claims, the amount of people opening maybe existing claims because they had, not existing claims, but maybe they already had, that's the wrong word, but they already had an account because they were laid off 4 years ago, unrelatingly. It just was completely overwhelming and to many times crashing a system that was 20 years old. And so the state not only needed to create a new unemployment insurance system at the time, which they, I believe, worked with other contractors, but they just needed additional manpower to just do the basic paperwork.
So what kind of basic paperwork is involved, and how are you involved in that?
A lot of what was given to individuals who were not in the unemployment insurance division. And so I work for the Department of Labor at this time, but I was not in the unemployment insurance division. That's something I usually would have to remind people coming to the office. I work in the career services division, which is, one of the couple of the big ones. Was just a lot of the entry-level paperwork, confirming someone's social security with their name, confirming their address, confirming that they are actually laid off, when were they, and because it had crashed the system, we were doing a lot of back payments. And so how long have you been laid off? How many weeks do we need to back pay you for unemployment insurance? And that was a lot of just calling people up, just getting lists of here's 20 people to call. If they don't speak English, just hang up and set it aside, and we'll have someone who can speak their language call. But I was basically calling noon to night people. I was given a lot of lists for Queens, Ozone Park, which is a neighborhood in Queens. And just talking to people, here's 20 Uber drivers you need to talk to. Here's 20 chefs or short order cooks you need to talk to. Just ask them basic information. Confirm how do you confirm that you are from the state and you're not someone trying to steal their information, because scammers certainly were taking advantage at the time. But just setting up and approving claims and getting people funds who needed it. Just hearing from people like, oh, well, I lost my waitressing job. I lost my real estate job. I don't have food. I don't have money anymore. And so not only was that my main job, but we had both mandatory overtime, sometimes 15 to 20 hours, and then optional overtimes afterwards, which I took advantage of, not having other responsibilities at the time, like family responsibilities, health responsibilities. I was happy to take advantage of the even optional overtime, just as a way to make extra money and just also have something to do. It was a negative time, and time doing that was less time thinking about looking at Twitter, looking at headlines, and so that was how it went for many months. And it's not just other Department of Labor staff who were doing this. People who worked in the Parks Department who were no longer organizing softball tournaments were both put into this and had mandatory overtime and options for overtime. Two, I believe the state hired outside contractors and outside call centers as well. I believe Verizon was a big contractor, at least 400 people. And that happened for a while, and for about 3 or 4 months, or no, 2 months for myself. And then while the rest of my office continued to do unemployment insurance and did it for another 6 months at least, I was shuffled back to just doing my regular job of career services and business services, both kind of as an accident. A lot of my coworkers were transfers from unemployment insurance because we have such a large unemployment insurance division, a call center near here in the Binghamton area. And so they were getting promoted up to doing more complex work. To also just kind of a quirk in my account that it was difficult getting me approval to do more high-end unemployment insurance activities, mainly accessing our email, kind of the email function for unemployment insurance if you were emailing a question about your claim. And basically the answer to why that wasn't happening is, just a very complex, very boring, very annoying minutia. And so I became kind of the one out of 6 people in my office who provide career services, being the only one providing career services.
So what kind of career services are you providing in the midst of a pandemic? I mean, have there been new jobs, really?
Certainly a return, people, definitely needing to hire, essential workers, or what we consider essential companies, factories, hiring. That was a big one. Construction still happening to an extent, certainly much lower. Retail, especially as what was it, phase that we ended the phase system long ago now, but we had the 4 phases in New York State, and of course it was different in every state. But helping people apply for that, helping people work on resumes, helping people explore the career options to an extent. I'm not a career counselor, but that's a separate job according to state titling. My job is more just looking at the research and resume writing and stuff like that. And so a lot of it though was also dealing with people who maybe didn't want to be looking for work but still had to go through the motions of unemployment insurance, whether because they did not feel safe looking for work at this time. A big one was school was remote and it's difficult to look for work if you also have child care responsibilities. To a little bit, and not to such an extent that I think the media makes it out to be, that some people just were making more money on unemployment insurance, especially with the additional federal bonuses. I do think that's very exaggerated from my standpoint, but there is some truth to it.
Okay. So you're still back in, are you still working from home, or are you guys back in the office by now?
By late fall, we started entering into a phase where about 20% of the office would work from the office 1 day a week, in addition to our supervisor being there all week. And so I started doing that around October, and that certainly was a benefit. We still have not worked with people in person, even to this day, since, I have not worked with a person, someone who needs career advice in person professionally since last March.
So are you mostly doing that over the phone?
Yes. So even when I was at the office, working at the office, it still was phone work. The state provided options for it to be remote, teleconferencing.
Mm-hmm.
I never had someone take up that option. I think the program is great, but the only way that we could do it was with New York State's proprietary software. I believe it's called New York Connect, which is, I believe, a free download. I think it works fine, but no one wanted to. It seems like customers weren't interested in downloading it. But the state was very hesitant to use like Zoom or Skype just because security reasons.
Makes sense.
So it always was by the phone, and even when I was at the office the 1 day a week, it was working by phone, working by email. But still, being able to go to the office once a week did make it easier. Did make the job easier. Getting access to postage machines, getting access to printers and stuff like that.
Okay, and that's still how you guys are handling things at the office?
For people who are not at the volunteering at the clinic, that is the case.
Okay, so let's talk about the vaccine clinic. That's the state vaccine clinic out by Binghamton?
Yes.
Where is that exactly?
It's in Johnson City. It's in a facility that used to be for the Johnson City newspaper. Their old printing office. I forget what the Binghamton newspaper is called. It's the same owner as the Star Gazette. To my understanding, it's the facility is owned by Binghamton University. When they, it used to be where the old printers used to be, and so when they moved to new printers, SUNY Binghamton bought the facility as kind of a community investment. Because SUNY Binghamton is not in Binghamton or Johnson City. And so when the state started setting up vaccine clinics, it kind of was an optimal location to build a facility, which they first built, and still to this day, or still right now, it was basically they put a bunch of wedding tents together and put it in the parking lot to make it both have the proper ventilation. But it's convenient because it's right off the interstate. It's very easy to find, even if you're not from the Binghamton area. But yes, it was one of the first state facilities built.
Okay, so what are you doing there, and how does the process of getting people vaccinated work?
I've been, since I've been working there, my first, I received an email late December 2020, early January 2021, offering to people who were state workers who were no longer working on unemployment insurance, and that was key because there still was unemployment insurance paperwork being dealt with, offering an opportunity for overtime or swapped hours to work or to recoup hours even for people who have been laid off, I believe. Don't quote me there. An opportunity to work at state facilities. And so I was interested in both for reasons. I was interested just to do help. And also, I'll be honest, the state was starting to get a little bit more demanding of how you documented our remote work. And by doing this, I also didn't have to deal with that headache. That's, personal commentary. But I will say just to help people, if I can say it vainly. Our first day of training was January 18th, Martin Luther King Day, and we opened the 19th. And basically, I've done every non-clinical job there so far, from getting people in the door, getting them checked in, getting them to the vaccination table, getting them to the post-vaccination observation area to make sure that they don't have an immediate reaction to the vaccine, because people do not leave right after they get vaccinated. I've been, given my government experience, I've been used in other works as well, from supervision to training, to data entry for medical secretaries, helping the Department of Health, because the facility I work at, all the earlier facilities are Department of Health run for the state, not the federal, or contract run like through a hospital. Later ones have been run by local hospitals, the National Guard, but the early ones were run and still are run by the Department of Health, helping them set up scheduling programs on like Excel, kind of just being a jack of all trade. I mean, like the weirdest thing is on Thursday, the Department of Health database administrator, like a half hour into the shift on Thursday, on our workday on Thursday, collapsed due to a kidney stone, which are not fun, I hear. And so I was basically grabbed by the DOH manager that day, who was like, we know you can, we need you to fill in for him. I watched an hour training for the job, and then I was then the database administrator for the rest of the day for, tracking that people are getting vaccinated, and then that stuff can be uploaded to their medical records for their local physician, stuff like that. And just kind of an understanding, like, well, you come from the government, so we know that you have done this work slightly before. You have the security training, so we can get you approved. But definitely my experience is a little bit unique versus maybe other people who work there, even other state staff, in that I've kind of floated between locations. That someone's sick, someone's sick or can't come in that day, well, Anders will fill in for them. Usually for people, the majority of the non-clinical staff is being hired by staffing agencies, maybe about 80%, I would say, and that's just my guesstimate for our facility. The other 20% is state workers. We have a couple other people from the Department of Labor. Not too much in our area, once again, because I think of unemployment insurance, just because so many Department of Labor people in the Binghamton area have unemployment insurance experience. The state doesn't want to steal from Peter to feed Paul. But it could be different at other state facilities. A lot of parks people I've come to see, and I think a little bit is that it's an opportunity for parks people to recoup maybe hours that they lost. Like a park ranger still worked throughout the summer of 2020, but if your jobs with the Parks Department was to organize softball tournaments, you didn't have a job last summer, because those were jobs, that position was not social distance friendly. And so we had a lot of people from that. Retirement fund, disability, developmental assistance, working with people with developmental disabilities. Definitely, they definitely made up a portion of people who, that was their, they just stopped doing their state job for the time being, and they did that. They did the mix of that and their job. This was just overtime for them. And that's also kind of slowly cut off now. Each month it's dropped off because more and more people are just returning to their main job.
Okay, so are you vaccinated?
Yes, I got my first dose on the day of training. It was offered, and many of us took the opportunity for it, especially the state workers. There has been hesitancy among the temp staff, which is interesting. Some of it is certainly based off of misinformation they find online. Some of it certainly comes from maybe a cultural background. Certainly, I don't have the numbers, but it definitely seems to be that the people, staff members who are people of color, certainly are definitely more hesitant to receive the vaccine. But I certainly felt a little guilty about it, but I was told, no, it's better for you to get it. And so on the first day of our training, and we only had 1 day of training, I received my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine, and then 3 weeks later I received the second. So it's certainly always been funny to me that I kind of went from being probably one of the last people who would get vaccinated, being of younger, no pre-existing conditions that would make me susceptible to a bad case of COVID, being in the job that I could work remotely, to being, frankly, one of the first persons vaccinated. And it certainly has been weird being fully vaccinated now very quickly and being like, oh, I can go back to doing my regular job. Oh, but no one else, or my regular life, but no one else is fully vaccinated. So that was an interesting month.
Okay. So, have you started going back to your regularly scheduled life, or not so much?
Sometimes I've done stuff, like maybe eating alone once I was fully vaccinated, or hanging out with people who have also been fully vaccinated, or hanging out one-on-one with someone who maybe was only partially vaccinated. But I certainly don't want to. I don't want to be in a situation where I feel guilty that I've made someone feel unsafe, I don't want to be in a situation where I've forced someone who is not vaccinated to be unsafe.
Okay. So you said you didn't have any family responsibilities. You're not married, don't have kids? Or?
I am married, but we don't have kids at this moment.
You don't have kids. So what does your wife do, and how did the pandemic impact her?
She's a school teacher, elementary school teacher. And so certainly, very quick adjustment from in-person learning to remote learning, the culture war that has been reopening schools. She's been on, she's seen it from multiple different sides of that it is, for many students difficult to work remotely, but it is, seeing the danger for teachers, of teaching in person and, teaching in person for a while, returning to teaching in person and what that makes the school like.
Would you like to add anything else about your pandemic experience?
I would certainly say overall, maybe a sense of guilt's a strong word, but I certainly have been very privileged during this pandemic. I never lost my job. In fact, if anything, it's been lucrative. I've been able to work extra hours during a time that there was, nothing else to do. Maybe I would have been hesitant to work overtime if, there was a camping trip to do or a birthday party I was missing. But if you're stuck at home, working extra hours is better than looking at Twitter all day. To, the financial benefits I'm getting right now for working at the clinic, which are very good. Getting paid travel. I'm getting paid overtime for that. I've never had to worry too much about my own health during it. I once again I never want to be in a place where I was making other people feel uncomfortable. But I certainly don't have, a cancer or asthma where catching COVID would have been very difficult. Certainly it can be deadly for anyone. That's something that we always need to keep in mind, but it's not like it's something that I had to lay awake at night thinking about every night. So definitely looking at it from a sense of privilege, and so that puts me in a lucky class for many. Certainly never having taking all my stimulus checks and being able to invest it in my personal finance instead of spending it immediately on groceries or on rent. Being able to invest it in my home or just put it in a stock fund.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for speaking with me today.
Mm-hmm.
All righty.